Welcome to Mind Over Marketing, the show where we break down the marketing, sales, and mindsets that separate the winners from the wannabes. The host, Todd Starr, has been on the front lines of business, sales, and marketing for himself and for his clients for the last 10 years. Todd says, "I believe that success in business isn't about doing more, it's about seeing differently." So today, we're getting inside the mind of somebody who truly thinks differently. They've built a successful business, but more importantly, they've had to outthink, outsell, and outmarket their competition to get to where they are. And we can all learn from their wins, but more importantly, from their failures to make our businesses better.
So Brad, thanks for joining me. Can you tell the audience who you are and what problem you solve?
Yeah, thanks, Todd, and thanks for having me on board the podcast. It's a pleasure. Yeah, so look, my name's Brad McDonald. I'm the managing partner and director here at Godfrey's Law, based in Christchurch. I'm also a notary public, and as you outlined in the intro, I have my own podcast, host my own podcast. And the problem I solve, to answer your question, is I solve people's legal needs and problems. So I'm a problem fixer.
So what's a typical sort of problem that you're a specialist at dealing with, or is it wide ranging?
Yeah, sure. Look, so I've done a bit of everything in my almost 25-year career, but typically I help solve problems, opportunities and threats in the commercial and employment space for my clients, whether they be business owners or otherwise. And so typical problem for me is contractual, getting deals across the line, solving complex commercial issues and employment disputes.
Cool. How did you originally get into this? What was your sort of...
How did I get into the law?
Yeah, and end up where you are at Godfrey's?
Sure, yeah. So look, when I was at high school, I figured out pretty quickly I was never going to be a surgeon. I was also rubbish at maths. But I had a real deep passion for the English language and history. And so I sort of scratched my head and thought, what can I do with that? And then I also had the classic being told by the vice principal, and I think it was the principal as well, that I'd never amount to anything. So I was like, stuff you, what's the hardest thing I can think of to go into university that I think I have a shot at? And law was it, because of the English and history passion. And so I managed to get through a law degree, and then I got my first ever job at Godfrey's Law almost 25 years ago, and I've never left.
Nice. Must be a good culture.
Yeah, look, it is a good culture, but I always say, in following up with that culture is a constant work in progress. It's always evolving because people come and go, and the culture shifts by necessity. It's a living and breathing organism. It's like any relationship, Todd. It's only as good as the work you put into it. And look, some days it's easier than others.
Yep, that's fair. So obviously the viewers of this podcast are looking for tactics and strategies and ideas and concepts on how to get more clients, how to cut through the noise, how to grow their business, and how to operate their business more smoothly. From a marketing perspective, like where do your guys' customers come from? Obviously, you've been in the market for a long time, so there'd be a ton of repeat business and referrals and word of mouth. But do you do any marketing activities of any description?
Yeah. So look, we do, Todd, to answer your question, and you're right. A lot of our repeat business is from existing clients and their referrals into the firm. But we've had a very active, I'd say, laser type focus on our marketing endeavours for quite some time, and that sort of what that looks like is that we many years ago now, I couldn't even tell you how many, but probably a good 7, 8, 9 years, probably longer actually, we've had a marketing committee here within the firm, of which I've pretty much been a member of the whole time. And the focus of that committee is obviously, the firm's marketing strategy and the channels we employ to roll that strategy out through.
Cool. So without giving away maybe any sensitive sort of strategy, because obviously you've got competitors.
Yes, we do a lot.
Typically, what does that actually look like? If you were to lay out like a rough concept, are you running Facebook ads? Are you, network? What are you doing in that space to get customers?
Yeah, so look, good question. And look, forgive me because I'm not a marketer, obviously, even though I sit on the marketing committee. I was trained as a lawyer, and didn't do marketing at university or anything like that. So, this is very much, I guess, advice from the trenches of what we've found has worked for us, and not a particularly scientific, perhaps, approach or deep theory. But we're across many different channels. So, yes, Facebook ads, Google AdWords, LinkedIn, of course, and then, of course, there's sort of what term the offline marketing. So, the involvement in the networking through the B&I groups and various other groups in that regard, through to what we do in the community as a firm and what we align ourselves with.
Awesome, very good. And are you like getting the results you're aiming at? I assume you've got a marketing strategy, Brad.
We do, Todd.
Good. One of the lucky ones.
Yeah, so look, yes, we are. But again, going back to my comment about culture being a living, breathing beast. So is marketing. Effort and input and strategy and rubber hitting the road. So with our marketing team, we meet regularly. We meet every 3 weeks. We have an external person who comes in to keep us honest and disciplined and accountable with respect to the strategy and what we're doing to align with the strategy in terms of the actual deliverables that we're pushing out through the marketing.
Yep, nice. So much of marketing and sales, in my opinion, it is about unconscious transactions. So people's buying emotions. They're buying emotion. They're buying status. It might be security. It might be avoiding a problem. It's not always just a product or a service. So what's one time that stands out to you where you realised maybe a customer wasn't buying what you actually thought that you were selling?
Yeah, look, and I'm really glad that you sent me some questions prior to this podcast, Todd, because as you know, in my podcast, I just sort of freeform it and roll it out and see what happens. But, I looked at this first question and I was like, holy heck, what am I going to say to this one? But luckily something did come to mind, and it's quite a few years ago now, but for a very long time, one of my biggest clients and a very well-known local developer said to me that, what your number one strength is? And I said, no. And I thought he was going to say, oh, you're a great lawyer. But no, he didn't say that. I mean, obviously he thought that as well. But he said, look, your number one greatest strength and value to me is that I've never heard anything come out of, or been ascribed to you or your office about me or my business affairs and my interests around town.
Yeah.
And he said that is worth its absolute weight in gold in terms of the business industry that I'm in, that I know I can trust you and that you don't talk to people about what I'm doing commercially.
Yeah.
So honestly, I guess that trust, integrity, confidentiality, all the things that you as a lawyer, just go part of the course and go with the territory as part of our ethical and professional obligations. But that was his biggest my biggest piece of value for him was that I was not only a trusted advisor, but I kept my lip shut.
Yeah, well done. That's really good. It's somewhat alarming, though, that even stood out to him as something that was special. So is that something that like you would actually say is like a rare trait?
Oh, look, I obviously need to be a little bit careful here. I can't, I can't really say, but. Look, I think for all I can say is that it just part of the course for me. I was so surprised because I didn't even give it a second thought. It's just like, well, that's just what you do. That's just what you do. Like your business is your business, and it's not my business to be talking to other people about that unless you authorise me to do so. So.
Yeah. I won't dig any further there, Brad.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yep, that's a bit of a tricky one.
Got it. I'm gonna throw the order of the questions around a little bit from what I sent you, so I hope this doesn't confuse you. So I think every business owner has a bit of an inner dialogue running in the background. I mean, every human does, but sometimes it's a coach, sometimes it can be a critic and a harsh critic. What's the most damaging thing that you used to tell yourself that you think held you back, and how have you changed that?
Yeah, this, and I've sort of been thinking about this. I mean, look, in all honesty, I've had all sorts of limiting self-beliefs in my life, both personally and professionally, and I think probably for me, given we're in a very competitive landscape. Lawyers are everywhere, and some people say that's a good thing, others may not. It's kind of like accountants, and so sometimes it can feel difficult to compete and feel like you're competing successfully in this space. But I think, people with bigger budgets, bigger brands, bigger names, and sort of probably being a bit overawed by that for a very long time, thinking, how can we hope to compete, this little old wee firm in Christchurch with these other players in the market. But that belief needed to go, because little by little, surely step by step, with some of the things that we've done that are maybe a little bit different than some of our competitors, we've managed to carve our own niche out. So I think if I listen to that voice in my head, like, we'll never get there, we can't do it, we never would have. So I'm really glad I ignored that.
Yeah, I almost feel like that might be limiting thoughts that you had, but clearly your actual belief on that topic was that you could methodically march forward, that you could actually, your belief, if that was a limiting belief, you would have quit, or you would have left, or you would have done destructive behaviours, or you'd have repeated the same things that weren't working. But so maybe you were thinking, how could we compete, and that might have worried you or frustrated you. But I think I'm hearing that your actual belief that dictated the actions that you took was one of slow progress and
yeah,
and not giving up, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. Look, we may have talked about this when we did a podcast together, Todd, but I certainly have with others. Is that sort of real well-known, widely known quote: "Rome wasn't built in a day." But there's a back end to that quote. But they were laying blocks every day, and that is the clincher for me. Is that look, if you think look, it's too big, it's too hard, why even bother? Why try? But I think the reason I've been successful in my career to date, both as a lawyer and technician and trusted advisor, as well as the marketing that the firm does to get to where we've got to today with our brand, etc., is because we've kept chipping away at it. When times are good, when times are hard, we've got a strategy, we've rolled it out, even when no one's looking or it seems like no one cares. We've kept at it, because you have to, because it just doesn't fall out of the sky onto your lap, in my experience.
Yeah, that's fair. There's another Rome quote. I'm pretty sure it was "Build it and they will come." And nobody ever says the other bit that you need, which is build it and then tell them you've built it, and then they will come. Which leads us into a bit of defeating behaviours. So, what's a belief from your vantage point with all the commercial stuff you've done and businesses you worked with? What is a belief about business that you secretly think is bullshit, but most people blindly follow?
Yeah, that's a good one. I've sort of thought quite hard about this, and I think to a degree, because we're talking about marketing, right, is that you need to throw a ton of money at marketing, and I think that's BS. Because for a long time we didn't have any money to throw at marketing. We had to come up with, for us, were reasonably sort of creative solutions to the marketing question or conundrum of how we move that forward, and sort of build it from the inside out, if that makes sense. Look, I hear a lot of business owners and interact with a lot of business owners who, talk about their marketing spend left, right, centre, and doing this and doing that and all the rest of it. And it's like, well, it'd be nice to have that sort of budget to play with, don't get me wrong. But I don't, from my experience and our experience as a business, I don't necessarily think that's necessary. Sure, there are things you have to spend money on, Google AdWords being an example, Facebook ads and the like. But I think there's a lot of marketing you can do without needing to throw a ton of money at it.
Yeah, so let's talk about that then, because I agree. And ironically, lots of the advice I give business owners, I almost talk them out of lots of my core services, because I'm a genuine, honest man. And people come to me with a wide range of problems, and they think I've got some secret marketing band-aid that will stop the bleeding. But actually, it's like So now I'm charging a bit more consulting fees and a bit more advisory, because lots of the original core services I would have typically sold, like I've noticed through my evolution over the last 10 years that there's quicker, easier and smarter ways to fix those problems without investing a ton of money into content marketing and ad strategies and, stuff that just, it's an illusion that stuff will immediately fix the problem. And lots of businesses need an immediate solution to those problems. And if you can fix your limiting beliefs and you can recognize those out of the box solutions, you can fix that problem quicker and cheaper and easier than all the rigmarole of doing videos and all this type of stuff. So I've had to adapt my own strategy, right, to make sure that I'm not just pushing people away who are desperate for a video, but my job is now to pick their brain a little bit and figure out what they're actually hoping that is going to achieve for them, and is there an easier way to do it. And if there isn't, I'll make the video. But they've got to convince me, otherwise I'm enabling their delusion to waste their own cash, and I don't want to be involved in that. So,
yeah.
So in saying that, though, if a business owner watching this, like if I gave you 20 grand right now that you could just deploy on anything, and it's risk free, it's not coming off your spreadsheet anywhere in terms of actual expenditure, you can do anything you want with it. And your goal was to build your brand and get some new customers and some new opportunities for the firm. What would you do with the 20 grand?
That's a really good question. Yeah, look, I think in terms of that new customer piece, I mean, the thing that's worked quite well in our space is, the Google AdWords. That does have real impact and effect in our space. But I think probably what I would do, because it's our number one marketing tools really from my perspective, is refresh our website, and that's something that's presently on our radar to do. Because I just think that is the online portal into our world, and first impressions really count in business.
Yep. What do you think? What if you couldn't do that? Let's remove anything you currently do. So you can't just dump the 20 grand into something you're already doing.
Yes.
Let's say you had to do something completely new and think outside the box. What would you do with that money?
Yeah. Now you're putting the screws on. Look, we have for years and years joked about the ads on the back of the bus, and that's not what I'd do, but that's something different. We've tried all sorts of media, print and otherwise. So, that's a long, slow burn, and the world sort of moved on a little bit from all that. Look, I think probably what we would do with that money is look at investing that into a number of different events for our target markets. Where we can get our people and brand out there in front of the people that matter. So we need to work out what rooms we want to be playing in and moving in, and then go and putting on some value for people to come along and hear about us and find out about what we can do and the problems we can solve.
In terms of like some workshops and events and things like that.
Exactly right. Yeah, correct. Yep.
So why aren't you currently doing that?
Yeah, good question. The simple answer is I just don't. And this is a bad answer. I realise it because I can hear it in my head before I'm saying it. Is if I had more time, we would be going to doing this sort of stuff. And we do this sort of stuff from time to time, but not as much of it as we should or could be doing. And it is very very much something on our strategy and radar that we're looking to deploy more of moving forward.
Cool. Yeah. In that same vein then, like what is something in marketing or just the wider context of business, sort of relationship building and stuff, what's something that you've pulled off that was maybe counterintuitive, or something that traditionally people would have warned you against, but you did it anyway and it worked? Have you got anything like that you've tried something out of the box and it's worked, but people suggested you don't do it?
Yeah, good question. And look, I think that the sort of the thing that immediately springs to mind there was when we initially started doing the webinars during COVID in response to the lockdowns and people going, what the hell's going on? And look, if we were perhaps a bit more traditional, we may not have pivoted towards that and done that. We might have been picking up the phone or writing emails or what have you. But so that was. Obviously a lot of people pivoted to that, and then that all came to an end and we all went back to work, thank goodness, back to the office, the lockdowns ended, and then pivoted to the podcast. Now, there was one other lawyer who, funnily enough, I actually went through law school with, who was doing a podcast, albeit with a quite a heavy charitable influence and bent, which is really cool. Stephen Moe with his Seeds podcast. But, a lot of people said to me, lawyer doing a podcast. I mean, remembering this is 5 years ago, and this is New Zealand, not America, not Australia. So I definitely know a lot of people, there were a lot of raised eyebrows and a lot of people looked at me sideways going, what are you doing with a podcast?
They're not looking like that anymore.
Yeah.
I think I read something that I think it's 99% of people who start a podcast don't upload their 21st episode. So if you upload 21 episodes, you're technically in the top 1% in terms of podcasts globally. That's not metrics in terms of views or brand partnerships or
being Joe Rogan.
Any of that. Yeah, you're not with Joe Rogan, but there's not much in the world really that you can be a top 1% at globally in like a week, really, if you actually prioritized it. You could bang out 21 episodes in a week if you had to.
That's right.
So it's an opportunity, it's low-hanging fruit that I think people play around with, and they do their first 5-6 episodes and then don't prioritize it. But what are you on now? You're on 80 plus, right?
I think just today I've dropped number 87. So I'm on track to hit my 100th episode at some point this year. 5-year anniversary, I think it was about May this year. So 5 years ago in May. Geez, that's next month when I first started on this endeavour, post-lockdowns, at least here in Christchurch. And and I think really just talking about that is that, you asked me that question about what would I do with 20K if I had that, pop into my hot little hands and that was risk-free. And, because I think the beauty and the benefit of the podcast is, look, for me at least, speaking personally, it has been a slow burn. I always knew it was going to be. I never had these delusions that I was going to become any sort of overnight sensation, nor did I want to, actually, in all honesty. But it was the reason I liked the podcast idea is because it opened up the opportunity or the world or the rooms I could get into, like into people's ears and headphones, right, across various different platforms. How could I broaden my reach and audience for my brand and the firm's brand and what we do and the problems we solve? And did that resonate with me in terms of what I enjoy doing, which is obviously helping people in business, hence the Real Business Solutions podcast. So that, my time and effort and energy going into doing the podcast and learning how to do that from scratch, essentially as a lawyer and not a media trained person, has all been worth it, because it's opened doors that otherwise I would have never been able to open for very low cost.
Yeah, and that's the real advantage to doing it. I think a lot of people feel like they've missed that wave. There's lots of people doing a podcast now. So what would my difference be? But that is bullshit. That is total bullshit. We're at the very, very, very beginning of this. Yeah. 5 years ago, I set up a company to create video podcasts for businesses. I secured overseas investment capital. I hired staff. We built a studio, and I was 5 years too early. The market was just not receptive at that point. I was having meetings with business owners, and I've got like a NASA studio back here with multiple camera angles and 4 or 5 different sets, and this is as cutting edge as you can be, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment. And I'm having meetings with people, and they're saying, where will people listen to it? I'm and watch it. And they're you're videoing it. It's oh my word. Obvious, right? So it's kind of that's what I was dealing with at the time, is in terms of just the market's comprehension of this. And I met with people at every level of business, big corporates, big franchisees, every industry, small local businesses, tradies, loads of people that are spending tens of thousands a year on radio ads. They're already invested in traditional media and don't get any form of measurement off the back of that. They can't repurpose it. They can't recycle it. They can't share it. It's just, if you're not there at 7 a.m. in your car, listen to the radio ad, you're not going to hear it. You mentioned the bus. That is actually good. If you've got money to be everywhere, you should be everywhere. And if you can afford to be on the back of a bus, I do think that's actually good. But you need to recognise that then at 5 o'clock when the bus parks up, nobody sees your ads anymore until the next morning.
Yeah.
And everybody goes home and goes on their phone, and the likelihood that they see a different law firm on their phone that evening is pretty high. So it's kind of, again, if you can be everywhere, be everywhere. But I know businesses that were only in one spot, right? They spent their whole marketing budget to be on the bus, and that ad is only turned on between 7 and 5.
Yeah.
So I think there's risk associated with some of that traditional media, but I feel like you've done a really good job in the podcast space, and like lots of people, I was inspired by looking through your podcast. Like, I'm sitting there on one hand thinking, I've got authority in this space. I've produced 300 episodes for Auckland University and big other unis and national companies and sports teams and schools and businesses and real estate agents, and like, I'm a veteran in this game, and I don't even have my own show. And then you invited me on yours, and I thought I should at least be doing what Brad's doing. So I had to eat a bit of humble pie, to be honest, after that. Because then I saw you post it, and you continued to post them, and you've got more guests, and you've posted today, and you're on this one now, and I'm thinking, I advocate for people investing in this, and I'm not practicing what I preach. So I have to look in the ugly mirror and recognise that, I should be doing the same. So thank you for that. And that persistence and that tenacity for you to continue, I think, inspires quite a lot of people. I've spoke to a lot of people on LinkedIn, and lots of people listen and get lots of value out of it that you might not even know. So you should be happy with that. And I hope you haven't got plans of like sailing off into the distance at 100 episodes or something.
Well, that'd be sort of preempting things. But look, no, in all seriousness, Todd, I'm very humbled by what you've just said, and look, that's greatly appreciated and helps fill my cup, because there have been plenty of times through this journey where I felt like chucking in the towel. And I've had my issues, my tech issues. We were talking about that today before we record, and things that I'm just, sort of not really my world, but I've stuck at it, and I think that's probably been one of my keys to success in the life, such as that success is, and I measure that in many different ways. That's not purely a financial metric at all, but the relationships I have and the things I've done, and the business I've managed to build with the help of many great people. I think just sticking at something and being consistent and turning up and grinding it out, because sometimes it is a grind, is all worth it, because I get to meet a heap of cool people like yourself. You were kind enough to come on my podcast, as you just mentioned, and a heap of other people in business who've got really, really interesting stories, backstories, what they're currently doing, and the value they can bring to other business owners. And that's really what I wanted to do, is just to help disseminate learnings, those nuggets, as I call them, the gold nuggets, for other business owners. Because, being in business isn't just all roses and all fluffies and, all massive profits and, a different coloured Porsche in the garage every day of the week. It's nothing like it, invariably. It's hard work. And so if I can, talk to other people and get some inspiration from them and share that, then my goal's been reached, and that's awesome, and I'm stoked. And look, the thing I love about podcasts is that there are so many different voices out there, and you touched upon this, people maybe feeling they've missed the wave, and I agree with you. I don't think that's the case, because, look, I know I'm not everyone's chocolate. I know some people like my chocolate and others don't, and that's fine. And that's just the way the world goes. I don't need to resonate with everyone, but if I resonate with some people and they find some value, then my mission's been achieved. And that's why people often say to me, oh, you've had a couple of similar people on your podcast. Why is that? And I say, well, because, everyone's got a different perspective, right? And people resonate with different people. So they may hear one person who's in a certain space and go, actually, that didn't land with me. But then a year later, I talk to someone else in the same space, and they go, gee, wow, that person really made sense, and that really inspired me or really connected with me. So, yeah, there's just so much opportunity in the podcast space.
Yeah, I agree. That's a really good summary. So a couple of quick fires, and then we'll leave it. What do you think, when you're asking guests to come on, because you've obviously asked, if you've done 85 episodes, you've asked a lot of people. What do you think the percentage is? Because I know my percentage, but what do you think your percentage is of yes versus no? Like, how many people have you asked to get 84 yeses?
I would say my percentage would run around about 97% yes, 3% no.
Yeah. Like, it's crazy, isn't it? I asked 20, I wanted to do the 21 thing, right? So if I do 21 episodes, I've at least immediately been able to hit top 1%. So that's my goal. And I asked 22 people and I had 22 yeses.
Yeah.
It's just like, so why do you think that is? And again, I think I know why it is. But why do you think everybody says yes when they're asked?
Yeah, look, I think there's a couple of things going on. I think people were, chuffed and delighted for, and also I think many people don't like to or know how to say no, in all honesty. It's a part of it. But I think that, the people I ask, and I don't have this sort of grand master plan, like I'm taking this person off to get to that person to, it's nothing like that in terms of strategy behind it. But, I'm approaching people who are in business, who have done the yards, and I think they feel like they've got something to say, after I've told them what it's about and why I'm asking them. Like, yeah, cool. And I think because intrinsically many people who are in business owners, leaders, managers, what have you, want to help. They're good people. They want to share what they know. Because, I believe a rising tide lifts all boats.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. Yes, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I even asked some really big names. This is 2 years ago when I wanted to do my own podcast, and I thought, I'll just ask like massive names. I heard somebody talking about the network effect, and his interpretation of that was, he can meet with someone for a coffee for 40 minutes and they can pick his brain. And only that person, it's just one peer-to-peer communication, right? Nobody else hears that. He can then do that with someone that has 100 subscribers and it might get 300 views. And versus a Joe Rogan, that is like completely insignificant. But he's just had a 300% increase on his 1 hour of investment, right? So it's like, what other marketing things can you do for free where you can, if you get 2,000 views, you have 2,000 times more value than just meeting one person for a coffee? And every small business owner I know is dicking around, fluffing about, meeting people they shouldn't be meeting, wasting a bunch of time on stuff, letting people pick their brain and all this. And it's like, that's all good. But even if you just carved out 10% of those things and just said no and instead did what we're doing right now, if these clips and this podcast goes out and it gets a few hundred views, like that's a few hundred business owners that have now listened to this conversation, and one or two might resonate with it. And, it's like, it's just obvious. It's absolutely obvious. And so I thought, based on that principle, I'll ask people who should say no. And I shit myself and ran away because everybody said yes. I asked like 4 really big people, big authors, very well known, podcasts with millions of views, and I found their emails online and I emailed their office and all of them said yes. And I thought, oh my God, I don't have the credibility or the interview skills or the concept in any way to interview them. So I actually let all of those opportunities go away. But that just blew my mind and really opened me up to just thinking like this was Richard Branson level people that I was emailing. 4 people you would definitely know. Wow. And they said yes, right? And I didn't even have a podcast. They didn't research me. They just know, even at that level, they know the value of 400 or 500 or 40 or 50,000 people hearing what they say when it comes to events, public speaking, book sales. So anyone thinking about starting a podcast, like, you'd be amazed the caliber of people that will meet with you for an hour. People that charge 50 grand an hour for consultancy will come on your podcast because they just know the network effect and the value of that.
Yeah.
So that's really what I wanted to say on that, really, is that especially someone like yourself, Brad, you are absolutely poised to get huge caliber guests because they just Google you or they click on your link to your podcast, and you have been in this game for 5 years. You have interviewed so many people, and you would be amazed with the type of people that you could get on. So yeah, that's my motivational pitch for you.
Yeah, no, well, thank you, and look, it's really cool because I think to succeed in business and in life in general, we all need to be motivated, inspired, encouraged, and what I've found in the space, like what you've just said, is there's so much encouragement out there, and that's been a real boon for me because so often in my work, in my technician work, it can be very adversarial and hard and difficult and gnarly from time to time and not that fun. So this has been a really cool space for me to go into to talk about business with people who all want to see each other succeed. They all get the value of networking and the power of sharing ideas and information and hard-won learnings and nuggets. And it's just a really inspiring space to be in.
And I'll let you go, but you also just developed some relationship, right, at a deeper level. So we've now spent a couple of hours talking like this. We've had a little bit to do with each other on LinkedIn. I'll come down to Christchurch, we'll have a lunch. Like, we're developing a relationship, right, in this medium. So if you think about aspirational guests or people that you don't typically think would have the time to spend with you,
yes, if
they come on your podcast, you spend an hour and a half talking. If you send them an email now for a foreword for a book or something, you'd be surprised the amount, how higher that percentage is for a yes, right? Or could you recommend this? Or could you introduce me to that person? Just an hour of time, right? You're developing relationships, and then you're getting content, and then you're sharing the message, and you're educating people. And this is $19 a month to be on Riverside.
Right.
Like,
there you go.
This is golden age, right? This is an opportunity that more businesses and people should be jumping on.
100%. Yeah, look, I totally agree with you. Yeah, look, it's funny how it works, and I'll just share this quickly before we wrap up, Todd, if I may, how these things work mysteriously. And I had a chap who used to be in my local B&I group, and he said to me, I really, really love your podcast, and, look, I'm, being a Kiwi, a bit humble, tall poppy and all that, and a little bit embarrassed, and said, thank you. And sometimes I'm never really sure people whether they say that because they, think it's the nice thing to say. And I was like, okay, thank you, great. And he said, look, when I was in hospital recently and, had a life-threatening situation, you ended up being in hospital for months. He said, I listened to every single one of your podcasts. And when he said that, it really blew me away. Like, he wasn't just being nice for the sake of being nice. And he's a really, really good, really a talented guy. And but for him to say that and say I listened to every single one and I really, really enjoyed them and obviously kept them company, all those hours of boredom when he was, A, very unwell, but probably B, bored out of his mind, listening to me prattle on, well, mainly my guests, luckily, was super cool. And so there are lots of, that's just one little example, mysterious ways that these podcasts work with people and what they mean.
That's amazing. He should. What's his name? Let's call him out.
Paddy.
Yep. He should be episode 100 for sure. Yeah,
that's a good idea actually. I like that. Yeah. No, he's a good man and he tells a good story. He's in the IT industry, so he'd be a good dude to have on the podcast. So thank you for that idea.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Brad, thanks so much for joining me. Love to do another one in the future. Appreciate your time and keep going. I don't know what 100 episodes means. That's like top 0.0001%. You're like proper podcast veteran over here.
Yeah, I always give up the day job. Yeah, right. Hey, thanks, Todd. Look, it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you. And, look, I'm stoked that you're going on the podcast journey yourself. That's fantastic. And I look forward to watching you grow and develop that and obviously grow and develop that with your clients and the work you do. So that's super cool. Good work, mate.
Thanks, Brad. I'm hoping to match up to you, my master. You're Mr. Miyagi over here. I'm just trying to be like you.
Cool.
Thanks, Brad.
All the best.